During his lifetime, Tom Yawkey was best known as the owner of the Boston Red Sox. More than 40 years later, there's a debate currently before the city about the name of a street near Fenway Park, Yawkey Way. Those who want to keep the name say it reflects the many contributions by Yawkey's philanthropic legacy. Others say it's time to move beyond the foot-dragging on racial inclusion by many Bostonians, but also by Yawkey himself. To explore both perspectives, we'd like to welcome a political consultant and a contributor to the Boston Herald, Joyce Ferriabough Bolling, and a trustee of Yawkey Foundation too, also pastor of Bethel AME Church, Reverend Dr. Ray Hammond. I'd like to thank you both for being with us.
Thank you.
I want to start with Joyce. You wrote about this issue in the Boston Herald, so why change the name now?
Well, I think personally that it's a good step forward if that's what the Red Sox want to do. I think that the Yawkey legend has sort of become folklore in black communities, and it's been one of the reasons that you don't see a lot of black membership at blacks at Fenway Park. You know, I'm not taking away anything from his good works, and frankly, some of those good works were in the running before he put his name to them. So some of this is sometimes all about money and who can pay, you know, for, you know, to turn things around and so forth. So I think that, you know, I'm not saying you shouldn't give more money. I think you should. I think the Yawkey Way, the Yawkey Foundation, you know, has fabulous people like Ray Hammond from the community. They didn't always have black people on that foundation, and both need to do better, the Yawkey Foundation as well as the Red Sox. But I think that changing the name is not changing the game. Okay, and the game is that there needs to be more done here for people of color.
Reverend, between the man and the name and the legacy, of course, what does the street name say to people?
Well, I would hope in Boston what it would say to us is that we're the kind of city where we can recognize when people do things that are good and extraordinary, as I think Tom and Jean Yawkey did. One conservative estimate we have is that about $300 million they've invested into the city of Boston, and almost half of that has gone into the communities most in need, I mean in a direct way. And that reflected the giving they did while they were alive. This isn't something the foundation dreamed up, cooked up afterward. It's a direct reflection of what they did. At the same time, there's no doubt about the fact that he made some great mistakes. He had some serious omissions in terms of what he did, and as was true throughout baseball. And the fact that, you know, that was the time that baseball as a whole was dealing with this before the media, before the corporate sector, before, often in many cases, the political realm, doesn't change the fact that there were people who were hurt and wounded. And for many people of color in Boston, there's been the sense, as I've often said, that the team they wanted to embrace didn't embrace them. That's real. All we're saying is the challenge is that all of our heroes have feet of clay. They've got weak points. They've got problems that we've got to acknowledge and wrestle with and figure out how we do better. And we're going to spend a lot of time arguing over a street name when I think what we really need to be working on is exactly what Joyce said.
Joyce, what about your sense of the history? I mean, Yawkey himself, or what rippled out from him, the Red Sox experience, really?
Well, recently, about last year, there was a big meeting of the Red Sox brass with folks of color, and you know their commitment that they wanted to foundationally change the way business has been done with the black community. And I'm not just talking about, you know, giving philanthropically. I'm talking about jobs, and I'm talking about, you know, receiving some of the largesse that the teams. It's not just the Red Sox teams, but the Patriots. I mean, you don't see many black faces out there at the Patriots either. But it's a bigger thing. It's about Boston as a whole. And so, you know, like I've traveled to Boston representing, you know, different interests, City of Boston, the state. And, you know, it's a constant thing. People are saying, Jesus, I want to come to Boston, but can I go to South Boston? Can I go here? We'd like to go to a game, one of the games, and people still have that trepidation. Not as much as it used to be, but definitely so. So I do think that a changing of the street name is a step in the right direction. Is it all? No, I think that the Reverend and I are saying the same thing. However, I just want to say this, because there have been some people who say, well, the Reverend gets paid from Yawkey Foundation. Listen, everybody respects this minister.
Yeah, the Cardinal gets something from that too,
well,
I think, right?
I'm just saying, yeah, I'm just saying that it is good to have someone like him on the inside, because he knows the community, he knows the need. So for those people who want to throw, a ball, so to speak, and say, he gets paid, he does the work, and he does good work. So, I don't think we need to, we're too busy tying everything together, saying, oh, of course he's going to say this and that. As a minister, his position is we forgive, we forgive, we go on. In many communities, that's not, when you've had to deal with racial conflict and exclusion, it's not always that easy. But again, I think the summary of this that we both agree on is that both need to do a lot more. I just think that, practically speaking, the changing of the name is a start for me.
And my concern is, I think this, and I understand certainly what Joyce is saying, what I think a lot of people feel. I think this really plays into what I would call, and it's not people's intention, but what I would call the old Boston, where we kind of focus on what happened in the past. We relitigate it over and over again, whether it's the Irish and the Yankees, or people of color and Tom. I mean, we get focused on these things.
And stay there.
And then we stay there. And what we don't do is to move forward on the issues that really can make a difference. How do we make a pipeline in Boston from our schools to some of the best institutions in the world?
Right
That's
here.
not there. Why is it that we don't see more people of color in positions of leadership across the entire spectrum? So my concern is, again, in Boston, too often we put into symbolic changes the kind of energy that really needs to go into substantive changes. And for me, that, as I say, we're here, we're debating this. This isn't the issue. It really isn't. The only other point I would add is that the whole name-changing process ends up putting us in all kinds of really odd sort of situations. We're going to go back to Jersey Street, the name of an English lord, much of whose fortune was probably built on the British slave trade. Tell me somebody help me understand that. If that's going to be the criteria, that you've really got to be perfect on racial issues, there is no Washington Monument. There's no Lincoln Monument. There's no FDR anything, given what happened in World War I for people of Asian descent. And the more we start looking at this process, we're going to find all we're going to be left with is Main Street and numbered streets, because we've all got problems.
Joyce, if you could think of a better name for the street, you still run the risk of, what are the fans going to behave like when they're at the game? So what will the owners of the future be like?
Well, I like Boston Way or Massachusetts Way. I think that, some people say, well, Jersey, why, go back? And others are like, let's just get rid of Yawkey because it's a bad taste, it's a bad vibe. And, I wasn't there, though, Ambassador Carrington's a good friend of mine, and I would believe him when he said that there was absolute reason to be.
And he was reviewing the Sox when he was with the Mass Commission Against Discrimination.
Right. Yeah, I think that was before he was an ambassador.
Right,
I know
back
when
in the
he was
1970s.
Yeah,
Right.
okay. But I do think that, look, the work that the Yawkey Foundation has done, I separated it in my article, as you know. I simply said that, yep, the Red Sox deserve it if that's what they want, if that's what they feel clears the air. But that the name on, and its reputation for for their philanthropic ventures, will stay. I just think that, I feel in my heart there's now a matter of like money, and even if it's giving money and philanthropic money, that, okay, so you took the name off of it, or what does that mean to everything else that they've done? I think people can separate that, really. I think people are trying to make a connection that really isn't there.
This has been a news, and we're talking with Reverend Dr. Ray Hammond from the Yawkey Foundation and political consultant Joyce Ferriabough Bolling. Reverend, another kind of a compromise came to my mind. You want to honor the Yawkey legacy. Why not name another street somewhere else, and that way you can still accomplish that mission?
For me, it's not, there were another street, I think that would be fine. The issue again is this is where Tom Yawkey lived, worked. This is a man in many respects who kind of saved what was a moribund team. However imperfectly he did it, he was a part of the integration of that team along with the rest of Major League Baseball. And in the process, both through his team and through his personal giving, did an enormous amount for this city and for people of every race in the city. Did enormous stuff down in Georgetown, South Carolina, bucked the trend in terms of supporting institutions that were admitting children of color when the rest of the community would not support them. So yeah, Tom Yawkey made some mistakes, but I think we have to look at the totality of somebody's life and be willing to say we can honor people for the good things that they do and be able to admit that they weren't perfect, but they still are worthy of honor and celebration.
Thank you both very much, Reverend Dr. Ray Hammond and Joyce Ferriabough Bolling.
Thank you.